Jake, 3, 2, 1, hit it. Believe it or not, we made it through 2 segments. So far, so good. It's part 3 of the 2019 holiday edition of the WILK Friday Beer Buzz. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Give us a hand, John.
How about that video? And make sure you check us out on Facebook.com/WILK Radio, so for sure.
And the Friday Beer Buzz and the Holiday Beer Buzz. Brought to you by Sabatini's Pizza and Sabatini's Bottle Shop and Bar, Wyoming Avenue in Exeter.
Lindo Sabatini, of course, in the studio. Lindo, good morning, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year.
Hello.
Tell me where I get a Pabst Blue Ribbon sweater like that one, because
Sorry.
I got to put it on my
Just
Santa.
for me.
Bill from mybeerbuzz.com, of course.
If you're keeping score now at home, we have been 10%, 8%, and we're about to be 12%.
Oh, baby. All right.
Higher.
Our pals from Breaker Brewing are here. Chris and Mark are here. Going to be talking to these guys about the new venture, the Outpost. We're going to be talking about not too long from now. My wife Karen is here. She'll be driving home. She'll be driving home later on. Amanda's here, our director of special operations, and Becky from the Krantz Brewing Company. All right, let's sing Silent Night now. Who wants to? All right, maybe not yet. Jake, rattle and roll, making the magic happen in the control room. Way to go, Jake. All right, very good. All right, so Bill, from mybeerbuzz.com. Last time around, we were talking about the stories that made the news in 2019.
Yes.
I have my special drinking glove on today,
Yes.
by the way. You definitely want to check out the video.
I want to see how much you spill.
I'm a trained professional. Please, don't try this at home.
That is befitting for this beer, and we'll get to the beer in a minute. This segment, third segment, we always do the Who Owns Who.
Who owns who?
Because the craft beer landscape has become very confusing, and I used to run them all down, and it became like 5 pages. The first year we did this, like 3 or 4 years ago, it was like a little paragraph. And now there's just too many. So what I thought I would do this year is just run down the Who Owns Who that has changed in 2019.
I'm a nervous wreck to hear this.
And still,
well, you're right, though. You know what?
Look at the size.
I know. You have a list and a half there, and you're right. It was once upon a time. It's like, oh no, another one, and now it's like routine practically.
Yep. Well, the first one's an interesting one. We talked about it. This is airing on Christmas Eve. We talked about it on our last show of the year. It is the latest one, and it's sort of a reverse buyout. It is Ballast Point trying to come back into the craft and independent beer world. So if you remember, they were bought out by Constellation Brands.
Yeah.
They were valued at $1 billion.
Yes.
There's some debate whether Constellation actually paid $1 billion.
Well, that was the head snapper, wasn't it? Everybody heard $1 billion. When $1 billion?
Yeah.
With a B?
Yeah, well, there are performance targets that they have to hit and different things that have to happen for that number to get actually paid out.
Okay.
But the owners parlayed the money they got, and I'm sure it's in the hundreds of millions of dollars, into a lot of other things, one of which was Cutwater Spirits, which has recently sold also to Anheuser-Busch.
Oh, man. They own that for a half hour.
The owners are doing all right on the backs of big beer.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the long-term joke, is that all these little guys are suddenly millionaires at the cost of...
You know what? When there's checks waving around out there, I guess, you strike while the iron's hot, so they say.
Yeah.
$1 billion is...
It's not what it used to be, Lindo. That's the thing.
So Ballast Point now has been sold by Constellation Brands, and you would think it would be someone big buying them, and it's not. It's something called Kings and Convicts. It's a small Chicagoland brewery startup with a bunch of private investors that seem to have struck up a conversation with Constellation Brands at an event, and it somehow boiled down to they own Ballast Point.
All right, was there a Kings and Convicts before this thing fell into play, where this buy happened, or did they materialize?
They materialized recently. How many employees, Lindo?
6.
6 employees.
Literally 6 employees.
We have more people in this room.
And they now own Ballast Point.
All right, so Ballast Point, which sold for $1 billion, depending on whatever conditions were connected to it, has now been sold to a company with 6 employees called Kings and Convicts.
Yeah.
That nobody's ever heard of before,
right.
ever.
And we're able to buy out what went for $1 billion last time it sold.
With multiple buildings and the entire...
Are they moving to Dunmore? Does anybody know that answer?
No. Apparently, craft beer was not Constellation Brands' lane, and so they weren't very good at it. and they quickly pretty much destroyed Ballast Point's market. They went from 410,000 barrels the previous year that they were producing to 220,000 barrels the first year with Constellation.
Which is where I get confused when they're going to go ahead and say that it's based on performance. If their performance drops and the owners aren't supposed to get as much money because the performance dropped, that's not their fault.
And if the output is an indication of performance, it drops, what, like 50% from four?
They canceled the barrel program. They canceled their sour program. They canceled all these programs because they didn't want to put money into them anymore. Well, guess what? That's also going to cancel your performance.
Sure.
Constellation really just
They should invite you to the meeting, Lindo, I tell you that. There's no doubt about that.
Constellation thought that they would just plug Ballast Point into their distribution network and it would work.
Yeah.
And the same people selling the big brands that they're selling aren't the same people that they need to sell something like Ballast Point, and it didn't work. And so now they're out there with this Kings and Convicts. We'll see. There are private investors involved, so we'll see.
Yeah, but did it go for pennies on the dollar? Like Kings and Convicts steps in, 6 employees. Doesn't sound like a massive organization.
I've heard rumor numbers, and the rumor numbers are in the millions, but not hundreds of millions.
Wow.
So, and I don't know that they're going to give it up. There is a stock form that someone has to file somewhere along the line if this becomes public.
Yeah.
And if that happens, we'll know. If it doesn't happen and they decide they're not going to tell us, we're not going to know how much they paid for it. I think it will get out because
they're
these
definitely
guys
coming to Northeast Pennsylvania. Something's going on, and we're not going to hear about it.
Yeah.
Bring them here.
On
That's
a
where
side
this
note,
happens.
Constellation has spent over $4 billion on Canadian marijuana stocks since 2016.
There's the cat. They're all high. No wonder they don't know what the hell they're doing.
For April 2020.
Yeah. Okay, now it explains it.
where they also took a bath, unfortunately. And that is, the rumor is that they needed to get capital to recover from the loss with Ballast Point and the loss with the marijuana stocks.
I have a hard time believing you can't make money selling weed. I don't understand.
Yeah, you would think the same thing about beer, too, right?
Well,
they
would.
apparently
You
did that.
You would.
So that was one of the big buyouts. This one, another one, just recently, Anderson Valley Brewing Company from Boonville, California.
Yeah.
A fun, long time. They started again 123 breweries when they first started. One of my favorites. They sold to the McGee family. Now, the McGee family owns a little brewery called Heldsburg Brewing Company.
Heldsburg.
And it's in California, and it is a Pico. It's a one-barrel brewing company, and they win awards at GABF, and they do all kinds of stuff, so they know what they're doing. They want to preserve the heritage and the history and the culture of Anderson Valley, and I think they will do so. So that one's a good one.
Okay.
New Belgian, Kirin, Lion Little Beverage, World Beverage. We mentioned that one already.
Morning, right.
Samuel Adams Dogfish, we already mentioned that one. A big one, Craft Brew Alliance. Anheuser-Busch bought them out, and that is Widmer, Red Hook, Kona, Emission, Winwood, Cisco, and Appalachian Mountain Brewing Company.
Which was already owned by AB.
Mostly, that was
a shelter
predominantly owned.
thing.
Bold Rock Cider joined Artisanal Brewing Ventures, ABV, with 6 Point, Victory, Southern Tier, and they're down in Charlotte, North Carolina.
It's impossible to keep track of this now at this point.
It is. You see, I'm heads down. I'm reading from notes. Aspen Brewing sold to Ninkasi, who sold to Laurelwood, who sold to Legacy Breweries. So there's a chain reaction there. Founders majority stake to Mahu San Miguel, Green King to CK Asset Holdings, Avery majority partnership to Mahu San Miguel, Platform Beer to Anheuser-Busch, Stone Berlin goes to Brewdog, Sierra Nevada acquires Sufferfest. These are all 2019.
Whatever happened to Stone Berlin, by the way? Because they had obviously big plans, and it was something brand new. And Brewdog steps in and says, "We'll take it if you guys can't run it."
They're saying they ran up against German labor markets and German labor unions and had trouble with that. Yeah.
And Brewdog can make it work.
They think they can, yeah.
Oh, okay.
We'll see. Fuller's to Asai and Flat 12 to Books and Beers. Boulder Beer, I mentioned before. There's a brewing company called Sleeping Giant that's actually going to now package and distribute Boulder Beer. So Boulder Beer just dropped out of distribution. Now they're back in distribution.
Well, I remember they dropped out. They were still going to keep their tap room open, but you had to go there if you wanted a Boulder.
Yeah.
Now they have a distributor again.
They do. Sleeping Giant's going to contract brew it and distribute it and package it. So that's a good thing. We're glad to see them come back. They were one of the originals. They go back way back, 30-plus years.
I'm still thinking about Brewdog, too. They were the only ones we had to record in advance because we couldn't get 2 sentences out of them without an F-bomb. Is that right?
Yeah.
That was those guys.
And with the Scottish accent.
Yeah.
You can just fill in that to yourself. So we have a beer for the third segment. Already I'm thinking it's the fourth segment. That's a bad deal. We have a beer for the third segment. It
Just
comes
be
to us.
thankful we don't have 5 segments, Bill.
Comes to us from the brewery in Placentia, California.
Okay.
And it is 12 Drummers Drumming.
Okay.
Now, we have gone through the 12 days of Christmas, and we have done at least 4 other beers from this series on the Christmas show and on our regular show. It is a vertical group of beers. They started with Partridge in the Pear Tree 12 years ago. That beer was meant to be aged 12 years and consumed in a vertical tasting with all 12 beers at the end.
I love that aging thing. We always talk about aging beers, and certain beers you can do that with. I have a hard time getting home with, like, you know, in the car. I mean, don't drink and drive, obviously, but aging beers for 12 years sounds
Hang on to it in the fridge.
Yeah, and it's called a vertical tasting, and you have different vintages of the same beers that you taste over multiple years. So this is the penultimate beer in the series. It is 12 Drummers Drumming. It is a 12% ABV beer.
Oh my God.
I'm not sure if that's coincidental or not, 12 and 12.
It's like anesthesia.
And it's a quadruple. It's a Belgian-style quadruple. They're known for bottle conditioning their beers so that there is a little bit of sugar and a little bit of yeast in the bottle, and it continues to ferment and condition over the life of the beer.
Now, when we say Belgian style, this is like, you can't call something champagne if it doesn't come from the Champagne region of France.
Right.
This is Belgian style.
Right.
You have to say that because it's not from Belgium.
It wasn't brewed in Belgium.
Right. Okay.
Now, they use... It's geography. They can use Belgian-created yeast. They can use everything. They can get all the ingredients. They can get Belgian candy sugar. They can get everything they want. It's like champagne. It's just a regional thing.
A French-style wine, but it's not from France. It's not a French wine.
Yeah, exactly. That's what's going on here. Well, it is 12%. That's what's going on here,
Yeah.
too. That's for sure.
So this has layers and layers of complexity. If you taste it cold and taste it warm, different flavors come out. There's all sorts of dark fruits. This is another quadruple, so it's another big beer. And this one is meant to be consumed now. So this is one you want to consume now?
Thank you, Bill.
Go.
Although it would age, but for their series, they want you to try this one fresh.
Yeah. So this one's meant to be brewed fresh. You're supposed to get Partridge in a Pear Tree and all 11 other beers lined up one by one and have them all
in your house,
in a row.
on your couch.
Who knows what's still going to be on draft by the time people hear this, but we will have 9 of them on draft from 4 up to 12 will be on draft.
Sabatini's Bottle Shop and Bar. The brewery is where this beer comes from. The 12 Drummers Drumming. Jake Rattle and Roll, who I thought you went out for a smoke, Jake, but you don't. And I know he doesn't smoke, which I thought that was weird. It's 12 Drummers Drumming we're enjoying here on part 3 of the 2019 holiday edition of the Friday Beer Buzz. Back with part 4 right after this. Yay!